And welcome back, everybody, to the Convergence Enigma with Josh and Stefan here on the UNX Network, as well as the Fearscape Media Network. I am your host, Stefan Gehardt, joined as always by the jolly and gullible co-host of mine, Mr. Josh Rutledge. How are you, sir?
I'm doing fantastic. Currently being yelled at by the Madar individuals because I thought a cloud could be a UFO. So,
well, speaking of UFOs, we got a great guest here tonight. For those of you on YouTube, you guys can see we've got Earl Grey Anderson here. He's MUFON State Director of Southern California and an active member of MUFON's ERT, the Experiencer Resource Team. And it was great because Josh and I at the MUFON Symposium got to go to one of the Experiencer workshops, and it was absolutely fantastic. How are you, sir?
I'm doing really well. It was a good symposium, huh?
It was fun.
It was, yeah.
Yeah, it was fun. Well, it's like the first couple days we hit where we could and then explored Denver and Boulder. But Sunday, man, we went from start to finish.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was there. I got there Thursday, and it was Thursday evening, and it was start to finish. I think I got to step outside of the hotel maybe 3 times.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it was just, well, I was on the symposium committee this year with Marquetta, so I kind of was involved in planning the whole thing. And so, yeah, if I help book somebody or something, there were a couple of people I missed that I shouldn't have, but you have to, eat at some point.
Yeah. You got to work the crowds and work the tables and,
Yeah. And we had the ERT table, the Experiencer Resource Team is, I have been with them for about 4 years, maybe a little over that now. And, it's kind of, it's all high strangeness cases that we deal with, abductions, visitations, and I really found an affinity for that. So I was kind of working the table, but it was cool because Kathleen Martin was there working the table with me for a while, who, is my dear friend and colleague, but I'm still a fan.
Been on the show a couple times for us. Yeah, we are too. Yeah. We got to meet her in person because we had her on the show a few times, but it was neat.
I hope I'm not offensive to her, but I didn't realize that she's a very small woman.
She's she's a force to contend with.
Oh yeah.
But
for sure.
Yeah.
It doesn't hurt that Josh, you and I are both very tall.
Right. Yeah. So it doesn't hurt.
I'm 6'5". I was like, well, hello, little missy.
Oh my, I'm sure she wouldn't like that.
No, she wouldn't like that.
No.
But yeah, just a lot of great folks rolled out for this one. You had Mark D'Antonio did an excellent presentation.
One of my favorite of the whole weekend.
Just in a good chance to meet him in person as well. So,
and we got to have Michael Schratt come on the show 2 weeks ago, and he actually finished up his talk on our show. He picked up where he left off, which I wasn't expecting. I thought he was just going to kind of rehash some of the ones he went over for our viewers, but he's like, no, let's pick up where I left off. So he gave us like 3 new cases, and we were like, whoa, and all new visuals and everything. It was beautiful.
Very cool.
It was absolutely phenomenal.
Well, if you liked this year's symposium, you'll love 2023 even more, because we're already working on that now.
I know, we were just joking about how now it's in Cincinnati. We both lived in Louisville for a long time, Kentucky, which is an hour and a half from Cincinnati, but now we both moved to Phoenix. So now we're like, man, we could have drove up to the symposium next year.
Well, see, now it's as easier to sell though, because now I can just tell my wife and kids, we're going to go home. You can visit with family and stuff, and I'll go to the symposium.
Right.
We'll swing back through and pick you up. So,
yeah.
My wife's family, they're all kind of in Ohio, is where they gravitated to. So that'll probably happen this time as well.
Yeah, I've got all my families in Toledo, Ohio.
Well, there you go. Holy Toledo.
Holy Toledo. So many churches.
Holy Toledo.
So, hey, Earl, I have to ask. I'm sorry, you probably get asked this all the time.
God.
Were your parents tea drinkers?
It's a musician name.
Okay.
Do you want the quick story? I'll give you the quick story.
Yeah.
Well, I'm a musician and singer-songwriter, and I kind of focused a lot of my energies at that for many years. here, grew up in LA. I'm a native and almost famous, just like that movie, almost. But almost. I played in a lot of bands. We opened for a lot of good and interesting, wonderful people, but around 1989. I was playing a place in Santa Monica in particular called At My Place. And there was a guy there whose name was, let's see if I get it. It wasn't Eric Anderson. It was oh goodness. It wasn't Eric Anderson, but it was close, right? Close,
yeah.
And he was the guy who played Judas in Jesus Christ Superstar. And he was a tall black guy who did R&B stuff.
Yeah. Oh, what is his name?
So the guy that did the marquee screwed up. He switched our names, our nights. So I get there and there's his name up there, and I'm like, because it was really close. So the names were close, Anderson and stuff, so I was just kind of thinking, well, I don't want that to happen again. And people would kind of, refer to Ian Anderson from Jethro Tull and go, oh, so I get it. It's a pseudonym. You're kind of Jethro Tull-like. And so finally I'm trying to figure out what to do. And I was in a friend's cabinet and I see Earl Grey tea sitting there and I start laughing. And I realized, well, that's like free publicity. Anytime I play any coffee house or anything like that, I'm already there.
Yeah.
And then they won't be messing my name up with the other Anderson guy. And so that was where Earl Anderson or Earl Grey came from. And but now, I kind of stuck with it. My grandkids call me Earl Grey. So, it's just how it is. It's just, but it kind of works, the gray alien thing.
Yeah.
And,
well, there's also the Picard reference, right?
Yes. The Picard thing. And I had that name. I picked that name before Star Trek, The Next Generation. Mm-hmm. So then of course, Star Trek, The Next Generation starts up. And it's Earl Grey hot, and I'm going, oh God, everybody's gonna.
No, now you can be like, I'm Earl Grey, and I'm.
Yeah, that's. They're all gonna think that's where I got it from.
And you were thinking of Carl Anderson.
Yeah, yes. Carl Anderson.
I love the Jesus Christ Superstar
that's
movie.
Him.
It's one of my favorites.
Very good. That was a quick Google, or else you had that.
I did.
There,
no, I IMDb'd it, but I knew who he was because I recently was looking up Ted Neely, and so I was like, oh, I wonder what the Judas guy, if he did anything else musically, because I'm a musical theater major, and so I was looking up, I was like, oh, he's done some R&B and some other music, and I started listening to his stuff on Spotify, and so I actually kind of got hip to his music a couple months back. So
he's really good.
Yeah, he's really good.
What's weird though, I mean, the thing is, I was doing like the one-man acoustic thing, and people were coming to see him expecting to hear a full R&B band with a horn section and everything. And what's weird is I played in a black gospel funk band before, back in the late 1970s. And we opened up for Al Green and Marvin Gaye, at one point, and we played all kinds of places. But I never bumped into him in particular, but there I was, the end of the 1980s, and I'm doing my acoustic thing. You don't have to pay side musicians and stuff,
right?
And if you can do it, and get away with it, and that's kind of was my forte at the time. But all these people were coming out to hear some cool funky music, and I wasn't it. So I didn't want to repeat that again, and I don't know, it could have just as easily happened to him, and he would have gotten a bunch of people out there that wanted to hear something more akin to like Richard Thompson or, James Taylor or something in that realm. And nope, you got Judas from Jesus Christ Superstar. So, and I was just ready for a change anyhow. It was just kind of, but it stuck, and there you go. And people still like to call me Earl Grey. I kind of incorporated my actual last name, and I usually go by Earl Grey Anderson. And when I publish my book, it'll have that. It'll be under Earl Grey Anderson, and that way it covers all the bases pretty much. So there you go.
Very cool. Thank you.
Oh, very cool. Yeah, appreciate it. So you're off doing your musician thing, right? You're jamming out, calling it unplugged, so you can charge twice as much, and decided to get into UFOs.
That's a whole other story. You want to hear my origin story?
Yeah, yes, we do.
Yeah, we do.
It goes way back
because you kept alluding to it at the workshop, but we didn't get the whole thing. So I was like, we're gonna ask him.
I think I talked about that on Saturday. You guys were there on Sunday.
We were there
missed
on
the Saturday one.
Yeah, you got that was a cool Sunday was great though. That was we got everybody's story, and that was what we were building up to as we opened up the giving the microphone to people in the audience who had alien contact. When I was a little kid, my mom told me some strange stuff. When I was about 5 years old, it was just, we were sitting in the kitchen and she started telling me about how, we knew that she had worked for Howard Hughes. She was one of Howard Hughes's 2 personal secretaries. She worked in the Santa Monica Sepulveda office there of Hughes Aircraft. And she was very good at, my mom was always really good at telling the truth, telling if somebody was telling the truth. She was good at finding out, somebody's veracity, more or less. And I think that maybe made her, for some reason, Hughes had an affinity for my mom, and he kept like kicking her up in the ranks. But she was she was technically a stenographer. That was back when they did the shorthand stuff, which you can't read unless you take a class in shorthand. It's weird scribbles. And she wrote everything. Her shopping lists would be in shorthand.
Wow.
But she would be the person that would go to these high-powered, more or less, it was a military-industrial complex, the early form of that. My mom was she was it. And she had to have very high security clearances to do this. And she knew pretty much our great national secrets. So anyway, my mom, she sat me down in the kitchen and, we all knew about that. That was no, it was no mystery around that she had done that. And that was her job. She quit Hughes when she gave birth to me in 1958. Yes, 1958. I'm 64. I'm old dude. But anyway, I'll never forget this. My mom starts talking about, there was this very strange place where I used to work, son. They took me out to the middle of nowhere, the middle of the great American desert. And I never found out which one, but now I'm starting to put some things together. But she said, they took me out and there was this little shack. It looked like nothing. It was just a concrete kind of bunker shack, and it was locked up and stuff. They opened it up and there was an elevator in this thing. And I got in the elevator. I knew it wasn't going up, but, I thought it maybe was going to go down a couple floors. She said it kept going down and I was getting butterflies in my stomach. I was scared. Wow. And the doors finally opened up and there was a little city under the desert there. She said that they got around in golf carts, that there was, people lived down there for long periods of time. She seemed to know a lot of German rocket scientists. I would, Walt Disney would come on with, like, Werner von Braun was one of the guys that Disney would feature back then. And my mom would say, that's my old friend Werner. He is a charming man. And she said that they had a bowling alley. They had a barber shop, but the guy could do my hair for me. So apparently she got her hair permed in a military, a dumb, a deep underground military base. and she talked about this a little bit, and then that was kind of the end of the conversation. And when you're 5 years old, it was just like, wow,
Yeah.
you know, but you don't really question stuff. It's your mom, right?
Yeah, right.
Later on, my mom would talk about life in the universe as though it was already a done deal that we knew. You know, she spoke about it with authority. I overheard a conversation with her and her sister talking about the Betty and Barney Hill case. And, you know, my mom was saying, well, I think that this could very, very well be real from what I learned and what I know. And this was my mom's background. Back in 1977, she kind of gave me another disclosure number because my mom kept getting cancers over the years. And now I've done a lot of research on deep underground bases. And this seems to be a common thing. A lot of people would get cancer after cancer. It wouldn't be a metastasized thing. It was just like they were irradiated. I don't know if they were using a nuclear pile down there to, you know, for power. I mean, it was probably off the grid. Yeah. I mean, otherwise you'd be able to, where's all this energy going? And that's, you know, there goes your secret.
Right.
So 1955 or so, when she was doing all this, I figured that they probably didn't know how to protect people from this properly. And so she kept getting sick. So we went to see her oncologist, and this movie called Star Wars had just come out the day before. So my mom had a clear bill of health, and she was all happy. I was, I was happy. I was maybe 19 years old at this point. I said, hey, here's this new movie. You know, it's early. Let's go have lunch and let's catch the matinee of this new, you know, science fiction thing. It looks really good. So after the film was over and the curtains closing, my mom just, it's like, son, you have no idea how close to the truth this is. You know, there's other life in the universe, the spaceships, all that. She said, they'll never tell the public this. They're afraid of how people will react to it, but we already know this is real. And she said, I never forgot this, but it put kind of a bug in my ear that I couldn't get out for years. She said, it's realer than you will ever know, son. And for some reason, that just kind of ate at me. It was kind of like, well, I should know. Why is that realer than I should know? And,
right.
Over the years, you know, my mom kind of clammed up. She got back into the aerospace industry as a headhunter for like a corporate headhunter for, you know, she peopled the old Rockwell Science Center out in Thousand Oaks area that built the space shuttle. Lockheed Skunk Works was one of her major contracts. Northrop was a major contract. Northrop, by the way, they have a deep underground base, or at least they used to. It had 20 floors, apparently, called the Ant Hill out in Tehachapi, California. Anyway, nobody arrest me, please. I don't think, never had to sign any NDAs on that. I think it's kind of in the ether and people know about that.
Any EG&G out there?
I know, exactly. Well, we had a guy in MUFON ZRT that used to work for those guys. But anyway, when my mom passed away, I mean, she passed away she got cancer over and over again. I mean, it kept coming back. And finally, the last time it got her, and it was 1999, she was on her deathbed. And I wanted her to lawyer up. I wanted her to expose what had happened and what they had done to her. And you know, I told her it's not right. They didn't compensate you that well. You know, she'd go to Europe every year. It was her big, you know, that was her big splurge, but it wasn't worth her life. And other than that, it's not like we were rich or anything. Mm-hmm. So, but my mom said I would never sue my government if I would do it again. She said, you know, it was me. This is how I served my government. I'm, you know, I love my country, and I would do it all over again, son. I would never sue them, you know. And she was gone maybe a week later. And I started, you know, I just really started reading through all the Leslie Keene's book had recently, you know, was one that had made an impression on me. You know, there were a few. They seemed to be getting a little bit more disclosure as time went on. And finally, I just realized that the only way I was really going to learn anything was if I got my own hands dirty and if I investigated it for myself. And that's when I joined MUFON and I became a field investigator. And I guess I was good at it. And now I'm like 800 and some cases in.
Wow.
And that doesn't include, the cases the experiencer cases through the, the ERT. That's another at least probably 100, 200 or something there. So that's how I got here.
So have you ever had your own experience, or?
It's funny you would ask that. Yes. Yes, I did.
Welcome to the show.
Well, it's not unusual, right? I mean, about 7-8 years ago, I was kind of a novice and I heard about the CE5 thing. I was just starting to investigate cases, and I remember I closed one that was a Mylar balloon shaped like a star, right? and I'm looking at him going, I know that's a party balloon. It's a gold party balloon in the shape of a star. And so I was kind of feeling my oats. I had my IFO, and I can't wait until I get a UFO here, But I remember going upstairs, and well, if you poke at the phenomena, it's going to poke back. I mean, this is something that I've told for a long time. I kept my own story to myself, but I would tell my field investigators because I felt like I owed them that little caveat, that little heads up,
Yeah.
And I would tell them that, it's kind of it's not like you're going to be a scientist with a microscope and there's something separate from you that's on some microscope slide that you're investigating. Mm-hmm. This thing is all around you, and it's I think it's part of us. I think that there's some kind of integral thing between us and our visitors. It's not just, air shows in the sky. Something's going on. I think it has to do with humanity, with evolution. So just be aware. And then I would tell them what I'm going to tell you, that I went upstairs that night after closing the case with a gold balloon, my IFO. And I was lying down. I usually put a bunch of pillows behind my back, so I'm sort of semi-recumbent when I go to sleep. My wife was already asleep next to me. And this is in Burbank, California. It wasn't a rural place. It's the middle of, bustling Burbank. Mm-hmm. So I was not asleep. I was kind of getting ready, getting comfortable, and the room starts filling with light. It was just kind of gradual, but you couldn't not notice it. There was no source for it. It wasn't coming from a light bulb. It wasn't coming from outside. It was almost it was light without a source. And the brighter it got and the deeper, thicker it got, it seemed like it was thick, like it was this substance, like a liquid almost. I became more, and I couldn't move eventually. I mean, it paralyzed me. Mm-hmm. But I felt strangely calm. I mean, we had a cricket problem in the rafters. You couldn't hear crickets. Sounded like somebody had coated our house in cotton. You couldn't hear external sound. There's no road, traffic noise or anything like that. The walls started doing this weird swirling number, and it looked like somebody had poured cream in a cup of coffee. It just, the wall just did this and opened up, and it was maybe 7 feet across, like this opening. Yeah. And you could see light coming from behind it. And these four diminutive entities came through. They didn't come through the wall. They came through the opening in the wall. Right. They didn't walk up to me. It was as though they were drawn to me somehow. It was the weirdest thing. And I couldn't move at this point. I'm trying to communicate with them, as I figured, I was trying to make contact. I guess this is it. I guess it's not going to be Valiant Thor or some pretty space girl or something. It's these guys. And well, they were not communicative with me. They seemed to work together like a surgical team. Everybody had a job to do. And I was inside, I was screaming. They started taking blood from me, and it felt like energy, like life force as well. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know if they were going to stop. I wasn't getting a calming message. I mean, I'd read some of Bud Hopkins' books where people were told, don't worry, this will be over. We're not going to harm you.
Right.
Nothing like that. There was no communication to speak of. It was just it scared the hell out of me. It scared the hell out of me. Anyway, they finished doing what they were doing, and they left. It was maybe 15, 20 minutes maximum. It didn't take them long to get what they wanted. They didn't exsanguinate me. I was still alive, although I felt very weak for a couple of days. They went back through the wall. The wall shut up. And I still couldn't move for a while. The room was still lit up for a while, but it slowly got dimmer and darker. And when I could move, I started screaming and yelling, shaking my wife and yelling about aliens incoherently, more or less. Yeah. And I think that she was really angry. I think that she may have thought that I had a mental breakdown, or I don't know what she thought, but she hadn't had any of this experience herself. And, she said something to the effect of, oh, my God, you've joined this crazy UFO group. Is this what I have to look forward to? And,
yep, I hear it.
Yep, same.
Now, I just kind of curled up into a, fetal position and just molded over. And I didn't sleep anymore that night, of course. It was like 3 a.m. when it was over. And we didn't talk about it. I talked to my state director about it. He was kind of a nuts and bolts guy, so he didn't want to hear, oh, my new field investigator says he met aliens.
Right.
Crap. Put all that time into training them, and here we go. I called Peter Robbins, and he was a little more understanding. But I mean, it's just weird, I mean, somebody decides to become a field investigator. You don't generally, suddenly have a close encounter, of the fourth kind.
Right.
Well, 2 nights later, my wife is shaking me awake. And again, our room was flooded. It was flooded with light. And my wife was pacing. And she was like doing this, and she was pacing. And she said, my God, Earl, you need to tell your little friends they need to leave us the F alone. She used that word. I already have insomnia, and I don't need this. And what the hell, and she's just, and 2 nights after that, we both woke up, and again, our room was flooded with light. We call it the weird week. We call it our weird week. And the third night, there was light though that was coming from the window as well. And we both went to the window and we're looking out there, and it was coming from above the house. I was not going to go outside to see what it looked like. I didn't want to meet those guys again. So I now looking back at this, it changed me as a person, knowing where I am now, knowing my mom's past that she had involved with this stuff. And I've learned more because, she does apparently have a file, with the Pentagon, and I've had a couple of interesting people read. But I probably shouldn't mention their names, but you probably know one of them. I mean, they're kind of mucky mucks that don't hide that they, have, government contracts and stuff. And so I've found now, that if there's a connection in somebody's, it's familial. If there's a connection in the parents' life or the grandparents' life, that it seems like people, the children and the children's children, that there is very, very often, more often than not, there's ET contact that happens. I'm not sure why. I've heard that perhaps it's because they're familiar with that bloodline, they recognize it. but it must be something more than that, than just familiarity. But I don't know what.
Yeah. I mean, if you subscribe to the theory that that we are experiments in a lab, to the ETs, right? That they're monitoring us to see how we react or respond to various stimuli, then it would make sense they would track through those genetic bloodlines, right? To see if whatever they did 40 years ago has had an effect on, the down the line generations. I mean, we do the same thing, right? We experiment on mice and other things. So
it is normal laboratory technique, if you're.
Well, I gotta say, so it's really interesting, and I hate to share my own story during your own time, but
no, I want to hear it.
So I experience night hag syndrome, have since I was a kid. All kinds of stuff, the sleep paralysis, the hags, the dark figures. And one of the stories sounds eerily similar to what you had just shared, because really? I was staying the night at my best friend Santosh's house. And the way this room was set up, the bed slides right in. I mean, it fit in between the two walls, you know what I mean? And anyways, I had woken up and I couldn't move, and I saw two figures there as usual on the side of the bed, and they were grabbing me and trying to pull me and things like that. And I can't move. I can't scream. I can't do anything. And one of them steps forward to the wall at the end of the bed and wipes it like that into a circle. And this portal opens up.
Wow.
On the wall. And they step through the portal and grab my leg and proceed to pull me through the portal. Oh, no. And I'm awake, right? So I'm freaking out, and I'm trying everything in me to scream because I don't want to go through this portal. I got to be 28, 29 years old. I mean, this is not like 5 years old or anything like that. I'm a full ass adult. So wow. But I'm trying, and I'm like, I took every ounce of me. I'm like just about up to my thighs. And I was able to muster, and I screamed my best friend's name, and he comes busting through the door, because the room was two bedrooms were adjoined. So he literally hopped off his bed and ran through the door, and it woke me all the way up, and my legs are pressed up against the wall, and I'm sitting with my legs pressed up against the wall, and he's like, "What the hell are you doing?" And I was like, "Dude." And I'm fully awake at this point, and I told him everything that had just happened. Wow. But I mean, I can remember that. Looking at him and then looking and seeing my legs pressed up against the wall. But just you talking about how the wall opened up and everything like that, and how you used the cream. That's how it felt to me, was like a latte. If you were to swirl it, that's kind of what it looked like to me.
Maybe that was more than just sleep paralysis.
I know, that's what I'm wondering now. I need to add it because I'm an experiencer.
There is sleep paralysis.
Yeah.
People will see, usually tall, robed figures and things like that. But in my case, I was not asleep though. It wasn't like I woke up out of sleep. I was awake. I was hoping to fall asleep. But
right.
that's I got something else.
But yeah, I've always that makes me wonder, because I am an experiencer myself, and I'm like, is that another one now? Because boy,
maybe it
really similar.
Triggers the other. Maybe they kind of trigger each other.
Maybe.
It felt to me like as I got calmer and as the room kind of flooded with light, I felt like I was put in more of like a hypnagogic state, because I was calm. I mean, I wasn't. It took a while for me to be horrified. I mean, when I started thinking that this could be fatal, that was when I was, that's when I got scared. Here's the thing though, I think that our visitors, they run the gamut as far as their motives go. Humanity runs the gamut, right? And
100%.
Just because there's bad humans, it doesn't mean that they're all bad humans. Yep. And just because there's good humans doesn't mean they're all good. And we're not talking about gods or angels. We're talking about other beings like ourselves that are just more highly technologically developed than we are. It seems like magic to us, but this would look like magic if I handed it to Leonardo da Vinci. It's just high technology that he wouldn't understand, so it would be witchcraft, and I would get burnt at the stake or something. But I don't think it was magic. I think that it was a technology that's higher than ours. And I don't think that they were just trying to scare me for the halibut,
Yeah.
I mean, but as time went on, I had a couple of other experiences. Like I had a close encounter with a craft. Again, I was driving to work, and I saw this craft, and it wasn't a beautiful UFO. I mean, I always wanted to see, this just like a sleek looking, zero gravity,
the sports
flying
model
saucer. And yeah, exactly. Yeah, I have a model I made of it up there. But it looked like somebody had taken these shipping containers, like really huge ones and very heavy ones, and had welded them together into the shape of this kind of like a boxy V. But the closer I got to it, the more I could tell that I really wasn't in control of myself. Or, while that was happening, I didn't realize it. But when I finally got away from the thing, I was just like, wow, what happened to me there? But, I was me going to work. I obviously, wasn't smoking anything or that you're drinking. Right. And not like you see something like that if you drink too much anyway. But the closer I got to it, it seemed like it was a teachable moment. You could, I'm like trying to figure out how somebody hoaxed this thing, first of all, as my field investigator training coming in. And there was nothing that you could tether this from. There was no telephone poles, and it was like 35 feet off the ground, hovering over the schoolyard. When I was about 35 feet away from it, it suddenly changed in perspective. It was a mile away, and it looked like it was the size of a football field. Same shape, but it just wasn't there anymore. It got, and that, but I wasn't taking photographs. I wasn't calling the media. I wasn't, calling other STAR team members from MUFON. What was going through my head was, and I didn't like my job that I had at the time. What was going through my head was you're going to lose your job. You're going to be late for work. You're going to be late. It's like, who cares? It's a UFO. It's a smoking gun. But, they were in control. I wasn't. I'm like 3 miles out, and then I'm like, I pulled over. I'm ready to fire myself from MUFON. It's like some chief investigator I am. I could have had the smoking gun. It would be, all over as far as, them withholding this from the public. But I think it was to teach me something, that what you see isn't necessarily what you're seeing. Other people aren't necessarily going to see it for you. And it was a teachable moment about something, about perspective.
That's something that Stefan and I talk about a lot, is that in one of the theories that I have even is that to see a phenomena, whether it be a full craft, whether it be a being, whether it be, lights in the sky, whatever, that you just can't explain, that event for you, the viewer, is an initiation for you, the viewer, right? Yes. It is meant to change something, to change your perspective, to cause you to think outside of the box.
Yes.
And then when you don't, so a little bit of so Stefan and I had an experience in May of 2020, and then I haven't had one since, and I've wanted one. I've wanted them all, like every night I go out and look at the stars. I want an experience, but
I hear that.
But I've not had one. And so, the theory that I have, or that, whatever I'm developing, is that they appear when you need that change in perspective. But if you're already going down the appropriate path from the first event, there's no reason for them to show themselves to you again. It's only if you start to sway or deviate from the path that they think you should be on to have that, you spoke of, kind of next spiritual evolution as a species. That's when they reveal themselves to you again, to kind of get those creative juices flowing and thinking about what does this mean, and what does this mean for us as a people. So anyway, so that's just one of, like I said.
No, you're right. I see it that way too. I mean, you have a person will have that flashpoint, okay, or that catalyst where that's that initial experience, and it like opens up the whole Pandora's box for you, you know. And for me, you know, John Mack would call it ontological shock. And what that is it, you know, that's what I experienced with my initial experience. Was it felt like reality, my formed reality of a whole lifetime's worth of living on this planet was pulled out from under me like a rug, sort of like a magician pulling the tablecloth out from under the dishes, you know. And
right
there I was, you know, I'm still me, but everything is changed, and in a way, you know, I kind of suffered from PTSD from it, and I you know, I met, you know, one Marine guy that was taken through the ceiling and stuff of his barracks and went through a horrifying, you know, I mean, they were intentionally trying to scare that man. But it changed him too. You know, I'm talking with him 40 years later, and just kind of a compassionate, empathic man without a mean bone in his body. I think that if there's certain Shaolin monks that will hit you with a sword to wake you up, they'll hit you with a blunt end, but they'll hit you hard, you know, and it's just like, wake up, you know. And I think that was my wake up. It initiated synchronicities in my life. I started experiencing things would connect. I understood the phenomena suddenly much more than I did before. Things started making sense. I started connecting dots about stuff. And I would be thinking of a certain author or wishing that I would meet some, you know, I wish there was another witness that I could call on that had seen the same, you know, craft and stuff. Well, that would start happening, you know. I mean, they were, you know, synchronicities, which Carl Jung came up with that word. It means a meaningful coincidence. And that's one of the gifts that experiencers are given. Kevin Day experiences this. He experienced this after he had his close encounter with the Tic Tac on the Princeton. He had like gifts that appeared in his life that we would normally attribute to our visitors themselves. So I think that there's like a cosmic contagion. It's a good contagion. You want to catch it, you know, where it actually makes us better humans. You know, it may be a scary, horrifying experience, you know, that may be what it takes to shock us. And you know, I don't think that my beings necessarily had good motives. I mean, they seem pretty malign, but I don't think that they're in charge. I think that they have to, all the beings have to answer to whoever is in charge there. I think there's something like Star Trek's Prime Directive or something. You know?
You know, it's funny because I don't know, about we'll call it 45 days after Stephen and I had our experience in my backyard. I'm like off the deep end. I'm reading as much as I can get my hands on. I'm researching stuff. I'm reading them. And so I'm laying in bed one night and I imagine whatever, but I feel like I'm having this telepathic conversation with Ingrid Cold. And so I asked Ingrid Cold about the Greys, and he says, we needed them, so we made them. They're like biological androids. They do our bidding. And then I've heard other people describe the Greys, you know, in documentaries and things as kind of being the same. So it's, to your point, synchronistic in a way, because it's kind of giving somewhat of a significant, you know, whatever I can't think of the word right now, what I want to say, but it's giving it more value because if somebody outside of my immediate circle is validating this experience that I had. And that's one of the things that, you know, has driven us to do this show for almost 3 years since I got involved, is that kind of echoing of, you know, what people are not alone. And there are people that have these experiences every single day all over the globe. And, you know, the number of people who report it to MUFON it's probably a small drop in the ocean of people who experience these things that just go and never report it and never tell anybody and just carry it throughout their life. And so That's probably the thing that as humanity, we have the most in common, is that we all experience these bits of the phenomena.
Yes.
And we all have that in common.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, it's not like, it's a personal phenomenon, I mean, this is one thing that I've seen with experiencers, whether they believe they're space brothers or they believe that they're evil reptile people, whatever.
Right.
It doesn't matter. It seems like it makes people better people. Their
Right.
empathy is kicked up. A lot of people will become telepathic. They'll have psychic flashes. They'll get downloads.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like in the Book of Acts or something in the New Testament. It's there's like gifts that that people have, and I see it from case to case to case. There's even a term for it, the Valet Davis effect, they call it. Kenneth Ring noticed this at first. He wrote a book. What was it called? The Omega Project, I think it was. That he wrote back in 1991, where he was a guy who studied near-death experiences, and he started noticing that there were similarities between the people that had a near-death experience and the people that had a face-to-face with our visitors, with entities, and so he wrote a book about it, and Valet and Eric Davis also noticed this in all of their studies from case to case to case. So people know about this, but you don't hear about it. I don't think you hear about it enough. I think there's a lot of people running around that are horrified. I know people that wish they could kill their aliens or throttle them. There was one guy that was sleeping with a gun. He was hoping that they wouldn't quite paralyze him and he'd be able to shoot him. It's like, you'll shoot your neighbor, or you'll start an interstellar war. Not a good idea, dude. But I think that it's not all malign. Now that may not be the motive of that particular entity, but the overall thing is that contagion is that we get that from them. And you know what else? Nothing is ever just one way. I think that we're affecting our visitors too. I think that we're possibly humanizing them because they're spending a lot of time with us. And from what I'm seeing, there's like this exchange of energy or whatever it is that if they're changing us, I'm sure we're changing them too. So so this is kind of the way I look at the phenomenon now. It's really changed from the nuts and bolts idea that I had of it. I thought I was going to be looking for spaceships, and in a way I am, but the exciting thing is seeing this interaction, and I think that it has to do with human evolution, because here we are, we're still hating on each other. We're still a warlike species. Our technology is way up here. We're ready to enter the space age, but yet we're acting like a band of ruffians, Genghis Khan, eat your heart out. Right. And so something has to change with humanity, and I think that that's what's going on. I hope they work faster.
Right.
Well, thinking along that line too is that Steph and I have talked about it before. If Hollywood, in the movies and the shows and things, have been a catalyst of desensitization of the human race to ET, right? And it seems like, I was just mentioning this today, it seems like a lot of the new movies and shows are dealing a lot more with spirituality, not necessarily religion, but just spirituality in nature. And so if you accept the idea that they have been along the way for the last 60 years helping us to accept ET, is this the new kind of narration of the narrative of kept getting us to accept more of spirituality and where that can take us as a species?
I think that there's something deep that's going on. I don't think it's malign. I don't think they're demons. That was a big problem that the Pentagon had. They threw $22 million into this study that kind of centralized around Skinwalker Ranch and all that.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the guys and you know, the mucky mucks in the Pentagon, they felt like, well, no, this is from the devil, you know.
Ugh.
And they didn't want to touch it. They didn't want any more money to go into that, any more funding, and they didn't even want to hear what we learned because, you know, they misconstrued it. You know, we were just kind of very, you know, we have our little box of comfort that we like to think in, and anything else we call, you know, paranormal, we call,
right,
you know, and it just like the word paranormal, you know, MUFON doesn't like that word so much, because actually what we need to do is open up our idea of what normal is.
Right.
Know? Right. It's not para, you know, it's part of normalcy. Extra, you know, I mean, you know, Newtonian physics is so quaint. You know, we've lived with a Schrodinger's cat for many years now, right. but people are still comfortable with their, you know, kind of nuts and bolts. You know, apple falling out of a tree hits the ground, bam, and that's all there is to gravity. And of course, we know that it's much different than that. It's closer to magical realism. Than that.
For sure.
So anyhow, I what I love about this phenomenon and just where it's taken me is it's felt like a journey. It sometimes feels like, you know, like there are epiphanies that you know, it'll be kind of quiet and I'll learn some stuff, and then all of a sudden, boom, you know, it's just oh, that's wow. And the synchronicities keep coming, you know. I mean, I had a case that I was working on 7 years ago, and it was back then I thought it was an amazing case. It's like, oh my God, this is like a Blue Book case, we're better, you know, and involves this whole family, and then the main witness passed away. Lo and behold, a little less than a week ago, I'm reading, you know, in just some random UFO group on social media, and it's like, wait, this is that same case. Wait, the guy died. Well, it turns out that it's the guy's brother, and he's ready to talk now. Back then, he didn't want to talk, you know. So, you know, we lost the main witness, and now there's two that actually want to talk. And I'm so thrilled, but it's a deep case, you know what I mean? It has like a UFO crash involved with it. It was on parts of it were on the front page of my old local newspaper. This happened in my old hometown.
Wow.
You know, Thousand Oaks, California, and one of the people involved, one of the witnesses I've known since high school, you know, and that person is ready to talk now. Before, she was not ready to talk. It was like, no, it's just too distressing. It gives me PTSD just to even think about. So, you know, it's kind of like these things will come to you in the right time, and it all seems very strangely ordered. I wouldn't have been ready for this case 7 years ago. I didn't understand the intricacies of this strange phenomenon. And not to say that I'm, you know, that I can understand it now, but I certainly understand more than I did then. And I've got, you know, so many cases to compare things with, and you notice markers, things in common with everybody that has experienced this. There's stuff that I don't tell the public about that, you know, somebody will say the same thing. It's just like, bing, you know, a little bell will ring, you know, and it's just an extraordinary thing. I don't feel like I'm alone for some reason. I feel like there's some guiding force, you know.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely the way that, you know, it's interesting you use the word journey, because Stefan and I have talked about, you know, since we saw our sighting in my backyard, we feel like we've kind of been on this spiritual journey, and these things are kind of unlocking along the way. And it seems to be that it unlocks when we need it to unlock, not necessarily when we want it to, right? You know, it's like I said, I'm like, give it to me now, but you know, it's not. It's like it knows that I'm not quite ready to realize that truth, and so it kind of holds back a little bit. You know, so I mean, I had that experience that night. We've had a few things here and there. I saw a black triangle taking my kids somewhere one day. little things like that. But
I've
like,
never seen one of those, and I'd loved. I mean, the only black triangle I've ever seen is this one. It's my little, visual aid for TV and stuff. But yeah, do you feel that those are? Do you think that we build those, or do you think that those are a product of our visitors?
both.
Or do you have an opinion?
So I think it's both.
Yeah,
I think,
me too.
I think there are some that we build.
Column A, column B.
Yeah.
And I think
agree.
And I think the ones that we build are probably our best attempt at replicating the ones from our other counterparts. So
I think they look similar on the outside. I had one cop that saw one, and he was maybe 35 feet away from it, and it was just hanging there. It was hanging over his neighbor's house, but it didn't look like his neighbors weren't being abducted or anything. It looked like somebody was on a coffee break or had to take a restroom break or something and just left it in park. And he's looking at it, and he could see these indentations, and there was like ventilation systems that he could see. It looked like there were hydraulics in there, and that doesn't sound like a UFO to me. Yeah. Now, if we saw one of their black triangles, I'm sure that it would be much. You wouldn't see all the plumbing and stuff there. You don't really see that on UFOs. But
mine, the one I saw, kind of was just above the tree line, just kind of sailing across into nothingness, and I was driving my kids to go get COVID tested so they could go to school that day, and so I couldn't pull over. I couldn't take pictures. And I'm driving, and of course my wife's looking at her phone, and my kids are half asleep in the back seat, and so I'm the only one that saw it. But again, to the idea of these things are presented to you to kind of keep you engaged or keep you kind of moving in that direction. And when I look at that part of my life, I was kind of questioning, what am I doing? Is this still like where I need to be? Am I crazy? So on and so forth. And so here's this kind of, nope, you're not crazy. This is stuff that's really happening.
Synchronicity again. My wife's high school buddy, she and her husband met us at the Denver Symposium for dinner. And she brought her husband along with her, and Lisa didn't know where he worked or anything. And we're all talking our usual stuff. And there are a few ufologists sitting there, and we're talking about black triangles and all this stuff. And he looks kind of, he didn't want to talk. Well, we found out this guy works for Lockheed Skunk Works, and he works at Plant 42 over here, where I got hauled away with a film crew, because the security didn't like us with a camera pointed at we were following the signage and everything, but they still chased us away. And he works at the Point Magoo facility. And I have a friend that lives in the flight path that would be Point Magoo to Edwards area. And he's seen some weird stuff. I mean, he saw a black disc with one little red light in front, perfectly silent, going right across, heading towards Point Magoo, where Lockheed is. And he called his wife out and his drummer, another musician guy. That's my friend Eric, recording studio out there on his ranch. I know so many people that have seen stuff in that area, also near Plant 42. I've had aerospace engineers put in UFO reports, and the one guy, and I know he wasn't, pulling my leg. I'll ask to see the badge and have them redact numbers, and stuff. Yeah. But I want to see the badge and know. Yeah, he was a aerospace engineer at Plant 42. He is saying, I just want to know how to get on that project. Do you know how to get on the project? I said, nah, my mom might have been able to help you, but I don't know, Well, but now I had a triangle that was seen in 1965, and I don't believe that was ours. And it was seen by a whole family. I got them all and, interviewed them all separately. They're like early 90s now. And that was not us. That was 1965.
Yeah.
I don't think we had anything.
Well, and this will probably be a conversation for if you want to come on again. We got to start wrapping up.
Sure.
But I'd love
how
to
quick an hour went.
Yeah,
My goodness.
it
I'd
always
love
does.
pick your brain more about the secret space program. But again, next
I'd
time.
love to.
Next time.
Sure.
So,
I'm sure we have one.
yeah.
Of course, we have a secret space program.
so
Your black budget dollars go, folks.
Right, black triangle budget.
Yeah, I want one.
yeah.
But we wanted to give you an opportunity. If there's anything you wanted to plug or talk about, this is that moment that you can kind of share anything there.
Thank you. Well, if anything that I've been saying sounds familiar to you guys out there in radio podcast land, just go to MUFON, MUFON, MUFON.com. That's our main website, and it'll say report a craft sighting or report an abduction entity or visitation. And if you click on either of those, you'll get somebody like me or one of my teammates that I have in my group, and we'll investigate your case. If you're an experiencer, we will treat that with kid gloves. You will be safe with us. We're non-judgmental, and we treat contact cases very differently. And we'll have resources if you feel like you need a support group. You want to have a hypnotherapist to try to regain missing time events and stuff. So MUFON is all-purpose, big tent. And I love the organization, so I highly recommend that you would do that.
Perfect.
And that's
Perfect.
kind of it.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thank you.
Earl Grey Anderson. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you,
you guys so much for tuning in to the Convergence Enigma with Josh and Stefan. This has been Stefan, and I just want to remind you to keep your eyes on the skies.
This has been Josh. The truth is now.
And remember, folks, keep questioning, keep searching. Good night, everybody.
Good night.